now. Professor Adediran Ikuomola, PhD, obtained his bachelor's degree from the University of Benin with a BSc in Sociology and Anthropology and his postgraduate education at the University of Ibadan, MSc in Sociology and PhD in Sociology and Criminology. He is a professor and a faculty member at Adekunle Ajasi University in Nigeria with the Criminology and Security Studies Department, also with the Department of Sociology. His research interests cut across issues on security and survivor dynamics, youth and deviance with emphasis on lifestyle and self-control theories. His work has appeared in Peace and Conflict Review, Peace Studies Journal, and the Council of Social Science Research in Africa, Adediran. He is a recipient of several national and international awards, some of which are the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Study, RSCAS, Italy 2009, American Political Science Association, APSA 2012, Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa, Adediran, Senegal 2009, 2011, 2015, 2016, and 2018. Partnership for African Social and Governance Research Fellowship (PASGR) Kenya in 2012-2013, Postdoctoral Fellowship American Council of Learned Society/African Humanities Program (ACLS) and AHP in 2012, Postdoctoral Fellow of Northwest University, purchased from South Africa School of Arts and Governance in 2013, and Fellow, Arizona State School of Environment and Sustainability Studies in USA 2023. And I have the honor to bring in Professor Ikuomola for his presentation.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm highly honored to have been invited. And thanks for all what you have done so far, putting this in place. I will say good morning from my end. Yeah, I'm not everybody very well. And the topic is timely. Sometimes, hello, Prof. Prof. Just a minute. I crave your indulgence, please. That there's an item, a very crucial item of the program that we have skipped. So, can you allow us to quickly take that before you start? Thank you very much. Over to you, Ayomide.
Glintplus makes it all fall just right. Scientific publishing made breeze. Connecting scholars with such ease. Shining bright with Glintplus, trust the source. Socio-academic networking, of course. Training scholars in fields with ease. Journal publishing, unlocking keys. With Glintplus Global Solutions unite. Inspired by the journey day and night. Grateful for the path we've known. In the world of academia we've grown. From chemistry to biotech bright. Many data. Thrilling sight. Agriculture solutions galore. Glintplus opens many a door. Oh, the memories we made with glee. Quality articles, open access, we find the key. Grateful hearts, inspiration soar. Glintplus, you're the one we adore. We've known. In the world of academia we've grown. From chemistry to biotech bright. Many data, thrilling sight. Agriculture solutions galore. Glintplus opens many a door. Oh, the memories we made with glee. Quality articles, open access, we find the key. Grateful hearts, inspiration soar. Glintplus, you're the one we adore.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a brief about Glintplus and what we do. During our special announcement, we'll break down some of those things you have listened to. But for now, I think
we can go straight into our discussion for today. Prof, over to you, sir. Thank you. And please raise your voice a bit so that we can get the output very clearly. Thank you, sir.
Knows everything. We keep learning, we keep reading, we keep hearing stories, even we keep watching movies, listening to stories of all things that have narrative. So emphasis is always placed on three concepts when it comes to literature review. That's
please, sorry for interrupting you. Your microphone is not as clear as it was this morning. I don't know what to do.
Can you hear me clearly now?
And we can hear background noise from the microphone.
Better now?
Yes, it's better now.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So like I was saying, we talk about in literature, it's all about writing, it's all about established knowledge, it's all about facts on ground, which must be used. So literature, for instance, becomes a resource, it becomes a tool in researching, for instance. And like I was saying, Dr. Essa used the word, the little that we know. It simply tells us that for you to be able to do something relating to writing, you must have at least some certain background or established work that you are building your ideas upon. We all have ideas, but we must also remember that before we came to this earth, there are people who also have those ideas, and ideas are built upon past ideas, experiences from society, from those who live with. And again, so basically, let me not speak more theoretically, but let's speak from experience. So literature has to do with writing, and from the word literary, it simply means expression of people's idea, thoughts that are documented and that are very valuable for information, especially when it comes to writing of thesis. So basically, there are three things I always emphasize when teaching research as a junior lecturer and even as a senior lecturer that will always remain relevant. And from those that have also taught me, for instance, we often emphasize research, and that's where literature comes in as for scholars. Otherwise, people who are in the literary arts will emphasize literature as their normal way of doing things, which is all about writing, expression, reading, making sense, finding fault, finding similarities. So I often emphasize three concepts, which are the SCC in literature review. We must understand that no knowledge is static, and that's why we keep the word review is always there on writing. The review simply means there are views that you are looking into. And what are those views now? Those views come in terms of what people have written in the past, established knowledge, documentation, facts. And this fact itself doesn't mean all facts are cast on stone, because life events are always changing. So there's always review, you rewrite, and you give a different meaning, and you look at it from different angles to it. And then again, the other concept is what I refer to, the C there, it talks about in literature, you must also be expecting controversies. And these controversies can only come from the last point, which I'm making about conversation. What are people saying? And from what people are saying, you can start creating knowledge. From controversies on ground, you can start connecting dots. And that's why I say literature itself has to do with ideas that are connected and sometimes disconnected. And once you get some disconnect in what you have read, it simply means you know what you are doing. So those, I will recap again. You must understand that the word static is not in literature. So no idea is static, and that's why it has to be reviewed. That's why you have to pick from it. You must understand that literature has to do with conversation as well as controversies. And that's what keeps researchers going. There will always be findings. Findings can also elapse and become useless. And at the point in time, you must understand when it was useful and how to move beyond. Otherwise, knowledge would have been static. Research and literature are two things that you must put together when writing. So basically, what is the purpose of literature review? If it's not for writing, we need to write. We need to publish. Like they often say in academics, if you don't publish, you perish. But beyond that, the essence of literature review is to make sure that writing is continuous. Otherwise, probably everybody will still be reading about Shakespeare and will not have come across people like Chimamanda Adichie, research that are contributing to health. Different diseases are coming up every day. People are looking at what was used, how similar some certain diseases are with diseases that occurred in the past, for instance. Even in agricultural settings, for instance, we also know that we talk about hybrid, we talk about traditional crops, and we're not talking about, greenhouse, and also these are things that probably were not in existence in the last 50 years or one was not coined as such. The beauty of literature is that once you understand that it is not static, it has to do with conversation, controversies, then you can start looking at gaps in literature. And that's one beautiful thing about research and literature. Establish a gap. How do you start? How do you rewrite a story? For instance, let me go historical, for instance. We've like those of us who are probably in our 30s, 40s, would have been taught that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. But we also know that now people were living in the Niger before Mungo Park came, for instance. And now people are rewriting their stories. The Yoruba history, for instance, the first set of people who documented some of our histories were not even Yorubas, for instance. People are now saying that, yes, there were a lot of controversies, even though the conversation might have been interesting at the point in time. People are now saying, no, some of these facts were either omitted or deliberately neglected. And that's what keeps people writing. You write yours today, somebody's looking at it, there's something that is missing. And that's where gap becomes very essential in literature. You must write, you must learn to rewrite, and you must learn, and there's a concept in literature, especially in today's world where we have so many uncountable writings. We are all limited to what we can even read, for instance. If you're in Africa, for instance, you don't have all the access to so many journals, unlike those in probably in Europe, in America, for instance, where you have everything at your fingertips. But nevertheless, research differs. The language of research, for instance, the language of science might be universal, but nevertheless, there are still some distinct variables that put scientific research apart, for instance, because language is involved. There are so many literatures that we cannot access. There are so many knowledge we cannot access. So literature itself, by its definition, is constrained by limitation. For example, I remember I was in a conference, somebody was saying nobody has done any research relating to GAD disorder, psychological and health term, for instance. And then I raised a question. You cannot be so sure. You can only say based on what you found, based on articles available, probably in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, depending on what you have, for instance. I say again, let's assume you have everything at your hand. Do you have materials written in Hindus by Indians or written by Chinese in the Chinese language, for instance? You don't have access. So knowledge, we must also be very careful how we use literature. Sometimes how we cite, what we cite. Because you see somebody citing somebody, an article written probably in 1930, and then somebody is asking, how come, are you sure you had access to the original manuscript? Or you are quoting from somebody who quoted. how to quote, how not to use some certain ideas becomes an issue in research. Again, utilizing literature review is to support arguments. Remember, I emphasized the word of controversies and the contentions relating to literature writing. There must be controversy, there must be conversation. You must learn how to use them, and that's the beauty of it. Especially in literary studies, for example, you see people raising arguments. People saying no, somebody is saying yes, and then somebody is at the middle, and then another person is trying to put all the ideas together and say no, all of you seems to be right, but it's a function of how you are looking at it. Just like in anthropology, for instance, or in archaeology, they will tell you that it is what you want to see in literature that you will see. And that's why sometimes you tend, if you are skilled enough, you look at some points that are not relevant and you use the relevant one. But somebody could also be very creative and say, yes, these are salient points, but it has implications somewhere else. For that reason, I'm emphasizing on this salient point. You're taking it as something. Sometimes we deliberately keep quiet on some certain arguments. And that's why we often see that somebody will rewrite. That's what we often refer to as a kind of rejoinder. Somebody is rewriting what somebody has written, or somebody has been misquoted, and then say, oh, this is an opportunity for me to right the wrongs of the past or of certain scholar. So it must be credibility and validity of research is a function of what you are citing. What materials do you have at your disposal, for instance? You must also understand that literature emphasizes gap. Apart from that gap, from literature, you understand methods used by previous researchers. Apart from methods, the theoretical framework. Theories are not just built. Theories have been used. Theories have been modified. Just like we'll talk about searching all over again, which is research, viewing all over again, which is review. The same way we modify theory, we use theory, we adopt, we adapt. These are concepts about literature. Literature can give you good way of starting a research. For example, I remember in a personal research, people were looking at how albinos, for instance, ocular types of albinos and whatever scientifically. But then I discovered that there are issues that have also not been raised about people with certain disability, especially from the African context. How we view disability traditionally, historically, relating to creation. And somebody now said, yes, what you are saying has a point, but can you put it down in writing? Unfortunately, at the time I was writing, most of the things I was saying was from the science point of view. So that becomes an established research that yes, most of the writings on certain things are more scientific. But however, there are historical connotations relating to how Africans have managed certain disability with time through literature. Literature becomes very useful. It's a function of how you understand it, for instance. You must also understand that terms are also raised. What are the key terms, recurring terminology, for instance? Literature can define a research question, for instance, knowing the gap. This is what somebody has asked. He failed to ask this for certain reasons, probably based on constraint. And that's why every literature will always have its own limitations, either in terms of the years. And that's why I see these days some researchers, some professors will tell you that your research should be, you get literature that are current. Currency is also very key in modern day research, especially in scientific research, for instance. But again, we must understand that knowledge is far, far beyond science. And that's why you must understand that history, even science itself has history. Where are you coming from? And that's why I see some theories of 1940, 1930s are still very much relevant today. But however, there are some additions to it to make it better. And now when we talk about the strategy used in collecting your data, it becomes very important because strategically, you must understand that you must be focused, and then you must understand where to source for data. For example, you know there are many databases these days with technology, but the library, even though the physical library is also going out of extinction, but it's still very much valuable, if at all. Not for the old books that you may find in some libraries, but for the space it creates. And from then, and that's why we see some people, archaeological research, anthropological research, often go to the library to see things of the past. Archival studies, the library still remains relevant in finding literature related to your topic. Now we'll talk about the emphasis on topic, for instance. How do you get your topic? Topics are not just imagined. You must have read something to give you an idea, or you must have been in a class, or probably of a professor or of a lecturer saying something, and then you say, yeah, this thing sounds, beautiful. I can probably take it up. And how do you take it up? You must go back to literature and see what has been done. And that's why we talk about knowledge as cumulative. We talk about what is known. And that's why we often say that in research writing, in literature, you want to know some certain things, and you build from what is known to the unknown. We talk about the nominal, what is known, which is normal there, and then you move to the phenomenon, the events which you want to look at. You must also understand that sources must be evaluated. And that's why we talk about the credibility of information. We talk about availability of information and reliability of information. Availability of literature, you could have so many literature with you, but which ones are relevant? Which ones are credible enough? Today we'll talk about predatory journals, so we must be very careful what we read, because what we read matters, because you are building upon it. If it's like you're standing on a faulty foundation, the house is likely to crash. And that's why probably these days we see so many collapsed buildings in Nigeria and some other parts of the world. Findings are key. While reading, you can start having ideas of what your findings will look like, because you have to summarize key points, note important details, categorize your sources based on themes and concepts. Then the next point is for you to synthesize your information, because you have a lot. It's not everything you put into your literature. Sometimes you are minimized based on how your research is structured, 25 pages, 10 pages, 50 pages, it all depends. But nevertheless, you must connect ideas. So simply means information must be linking, must be connecting itself. And that's why writing is very key. It's a skill. And that's why the literary studies will say, try to write at least a piece every day. Could be half a page. Rewrite it in different formats. And that's why one problem again these days, I see a lot of people copy people's idea. You must learn to copy. How do you copy? You don't just copy. There are laws relating to citations, for instance. We are often guilty of that. Sometimes you have the idea, you have to look at what people have said about it. Some people are so good in crafting ideas that you just feel that, let me just copy it and use it as it is. You must reference. But like in the US, for instance, they often say that read something, speak to the screen, record yourself of what you have read, not cramming, so that you can paraphrase. So by the time you, just like saying it in your own words and before writing, make sure the ideas are still part of what you have, said. And then you give credence to those who have established that idea. Otherwise, issues relating to plagiarism, and now we are talking about self-plagiarism, even your own ideas, you can't say because you've used it in a particular article before that you can just use it again in a new one. You have to cite yourself, or you paraphrase to make sense out of it. Writing your literature review, for instance, must be structured. It must be logical. There must be context in it. You must use your literature as a tool. Literature gives you power to speak to facts. And then it also gives insight, not just of today, but future. And that's how we talk about limitations of research. For future's sake, people can expand on certain, because no research, remember I started by saying that literature is all about expression, knowledge of fact. No fact is cut on stone. Things will always change. Knowledge will always change. Not necessarily completely go into extinction, but you build upon it. Basically, after getting your literature, you must also know that, yes, you need to revise, you need to edit, ensure clarity. And that's why sometimes you get a review. You've written a very good piece, people review it, they send you comments to clarify some concepts so that it can be well understood by people outside your field. And that's why we talk about jargons. Even in language, we talk about jargons. Your jargons must be good enough for people outside your field. And that's the beauty of research. And that's why today we're talking about science communication as a skill. How do you communicate science to the layman who is not educated? Or even for us who are not in core sciences to understand. And that's the beauty of knowledge. Knowledge should not be limited. So your literature should be expressed in such a way that emphasis on simplicity and a wider reach becomes your key concept. Now, strategies, for instance, we talk about research as knowledge base. Through research, you can make good questions. You can raise good questions. And that's where gap comes into it. Choose right. We often say choose a right. Look for concepts, look for journals that or articles that are in your field. For example, you have some database that are purely for agriculture, database that are purely for probably people in the social sciences, philosophical based database gives you more information. But for example, life is becoming much easier. People emphasize on using Google Scholar. From Google Scholar, you see people's article. And one thing I often advise younger ones who are into research is that you must learn to read references. You have a beautiful article, or you have an article that is not so interesting. Move to the references. The references can become a very good pointer on getting information. Seeing good, because no matter how bad an article is, the references could also be very rich and be related to what probably you want to work on. And like I often tell people, that sometimes I get lost in people's reference. You click, thank God for computer, you can just click on somebody's references, it takes you to the original article. And then you can see what you need or what can be used. I always advise people to do that. PubMed, for instance, emphasizes on medical publication. You have the Scopus, Web of Science. Google Scholar is very key to us. And those in engineering, for instance, psychology, they also have their science info, psych info, for instance. These are key journals. And again, I often tell people that you must also learn to understand local content. And that's where the way we write back at home in Nigeria, for instance, may give you more expression, more tool to combine with some elitist journal, for instance. You can start locally and be more relevant in the international community, because local ideas are actually very good, because research these days emphasizes on location. And that's what we talk about, locally based ideas. How do you sell it? And that's why you see sometimes some of us as researchers are stuck back at home. How do you let the international world know, for instance, what is happening in that particular community? Because one way or the other, the world is related. There are some, like I always tell people that sometimes people think that everywhere in the US, there are places in the US where we don't have good facilities, especially when among probably the Native Americans, for instance. There are places where that are as bad as Africa. So some of this peculiarity, how to solve problems locally, could also be very applicable in some of these developed countries. It's only through research you will know. But if you don't read, how do you write? That's the major thing. Keywords are often derived from what people have written in the past. So getting those terms, because like I said before, every gen has its own, what we often refer to as jargon. You must learn to use the jargon that are peculiar to certain disciplines and use it well. And sometimes you must also know that research could also be very multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. How to use the concept. It's just like when you use the concept of health and well-being. It cuts across sciences to the social sciences, because there's a behavioral component relating to health issues. You must understand cultural specificity. You must also understand how the international world also look at it. So you must learn to restrict yourself to some of the ideas. And lastly, as I was saying here in this, the number 4 here says that you must review reference lists. References are very key to knowledge. Consider different types of sources. The ability to put 2 and 1 together, 3 and 4 together, makes more sense than limiting yourself to a particular article. We've seen people just rely on particular article. All the citations are just from one article. Then people start asking questions. Today we'll talk about similarity index. You must also know that once it gets beyond certain threshold, people become editors become wary, and then you are forced to either rewrite or get a rejection. In terms of, you must learn to combine sources, and that's also the beauty of it, is when your ability to look at different sides, different controversies. And you must also understand that things that are not supporting your ideas are not necessarily irrelevant, because controversy also builds a better place, a better platform for you to put yourself into the discussion. Use citation tracking, for instance. You must also understand that there are so many ways to know articles that can be gotten online, articles that are historical, and how to lay hands upon them. Many databases allow you to set up alerts so that you can get new information on certain ideas or certain research that has been published for you to be more current and more relevant. And researchers are expected to be more current and more relevant. Evaluate your, evaluate sources critically. Know journals that are credible and journals that are not credible, and then make good sense of it. So generally, I want to conclude by saying that literature review is a crucial component of research that provides a foundation and framework for conducting meaningful studies. So it simply means, and that's why you see in most studies or most programs, for example, if you have to do a PhD, they often say that they should have at least a 1-year reading round. Have an idea, go and read and see gaps, see what people have done, because nobody is coming, nobody can reinvent the wheel. You must be building on something. Only on rare occasion, even though something is new, you must build on some certain similarities. You must let people know that this is where you are coming from. The world is no longer a vacuum. We talk about globalization. You are building upon something, and that's the power of literature. How do you connect? How do you plug in so many ideas and make it more meaningful? With this, I think I'll be expecting questions from the audience and see what we can do relating to more arguments, more controversies, and more knowledge base relating to the concept of literature review. At this point, I will like to hear more questions and give some answers where possible. Thank you.
My network. Is it okay? Thank you very much, Prof.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I, I, I want to appreciate you for being very mindful of time. I could see the rush so that you. Eh? My mic is off.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you very much, sir. So I want to appreciate you so much, sir, and I'm happy with the speed of time that you have used. So many things are very crucial in literature review, and I'm happy that you have touched on some of them. Every time on this program, we always wish that we have more than enough time so that you can clear a lot of things and get deep down into the matter. For our younger ones to learn so much. Please, are you hearing me, Prof?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. And I hope the audience too are hearing me very clearly. So I'm saying that there we as much as possible within the little time that we have for questions, I will appreciate that you go to some nitty-gritties. I'm sure the questions will start coming in and we'll be projecting them. However, there are some that have been very crucial that people have asked. One of it is this issue of search. Can you go further a bit? Because that is where most of our students, most of our young researchers have problem. You have mentioned the databases, but how do you determine, the relevance of the sources, and how do you practically do the search? Can you give some information on that?
Yeah.
What are
You
the
can hear me?
tips for efficient searching that can bring the best results for researchers?
We often say it's also a function of how young are you into research, for instance. For younger scholars, for instance, we often advise that you start with key concepts in your topic. For instance, if, for example, you've agreed with the topic with your supervisor, the key concept for a young researcher, make sure, like we often say, if, for example, you want to look at a sociocultural conception of albinism in Africa, for instance, you don't just type everything into a database for you to get everything. For example, you look at albinism in Africa, you try to limit it down. You start with one, and then when you start reading, you don't rush. I always have people, you don't rush because you're not machine. You start with little, you start looking at concepts relating to it. Or sometimes you see a whole lot, and then you start with one. Simplicity in searching is the key word. Don't put all your topic in a search engine, for instance. Break it down. That's the first thing.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm very sure that a lot of people have learned a lot from there. A lot of people just carry the topic as a whole and put it on the search.
Yeah.
You get a lot of bulky things. So audience, we need to learn this from Prof, that break your topic in going on the search. Okay, well, I will take time to look at other questions that I have here. There's one on the screen. How do AI tools aid literature review? I know I'm taking you to an ocean of AI, but don't delve into it too much.
I'm not going to dive into it too much. Well,
yeah.
like for example, in Northern Arizona University, for instance, there's no consensus relating to the use of AI. But however, you must understand that it's a tool. AI could be very funny. AI could give you references that are not existing. You must understand, first and foremost. But whatever AI gives you, you must invest your time in it. For example, if AI can give you a whole 25 pages literature review, the ideas might be very cogent. The sources might be faulty. So there are some guys who have mastered the usage of AI, no doubt about that. And that's why in university settings, it becomes a lecturer policy, the use of AI, not because there's no agreement on it. But however, if a lecturer says he doesn't want AI, it becomes an offense. So for you, reading about using AI makes you more lazy, makes you less creative. It's a problem. And I will not encourage younger ones to go into that. You are likely to find yourself probably with time, with the law. You must learn to paraphrase whatever you get. Make sure you confirm what AI has given. That's one thing I can say about AI, for instance. And you must learn to rewrite. Speak. Sometimes now we have phones that can record ideas. Speak to what you have read and then rewrite.
Thank you very much, Prof. You have placed us in the middle, and that is what I always tell my students. You can use AI, but don't over-rely on it because it can make you to be extremely lazy and you don't have anything upstairs. Thank you very much, Prof. Before you take another question that is pumping up on the screen, there is always this scenario of, writing literature review as if it is book of reading. Remember where you started, sir, that we are supposed to compare views. For example, if I'm writing about health situation of some people, that is my title. I'm expected to look at what did Mr. A found about the health of that same set of people. Maybe they are farmers. in a particular time, compare it with what Mr. B or author B found elsewhere. How do we dance around this? Because some people, when they write literature review, you'll be reading it as if you are just reading. They're not comparing views. Can you emphasize this again, Prof?
Yeah. So it's also a function of so many things too. We've seen cases where people say, some professors will say that they're not bothered with the literature, that people don't read literature. These are misconceptions. We may have also passed through some of those things. You must also understand that the trend, like for example, if you see the historical research project, that will say, that will always start with an author. Ikuomola, this. You move to the next paragraph. Kolodoye, this. That was something we met in schools in the 90s, for instance. But that's no longer the trend. And we must also understand that things are changing. What is the current vogue of writing literature? Is to put different ideas together. Don't be scared of looking at what contradicts a particular idea. But you must understand why. Is it because of the methodology that the particular lecturer moves this way? Bring it in. The difference is, it's just like the word would have been monotonous if everybody was just moving on a particular line. The same thing with music. For example, you cannot start singing the same thing. There's always an era, for instance, when pop was in vogue, when reggae was in vogue, and how people talk about Afrobeat, for instance, now. This, you must learn, and that's the beauty of it. You can be creative about your literature, and that's what we talk about creative writing. We've seen scientists who are very creative in writing a new style. And sometimes you also look at some journals that accept creativity. There are some journals that are still very traditional. There are some professors who are traditional. There are supervisors who are traditional. But there are supervisors who will tell you that this is the modern trend. Though I did not use it, two of us can learn. And that's why I see a professor and a new student will tell you that my ideas are becoming obsolete. If you are good, look at it this way. Look at what this person has done. You must appreciate style. Style counts. There's no one particular style in writing. And that's why we look at journals and look at for what they need, their specification, and look at people who have published there, how the pattern they use.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah.
What sense can you make out of the question that is on the screen right now?
Yeah, it says, which review method can you prescribe for us to use? For example, it's like telling a doctor to prescribe drugs for all ailments. You will not find one. You will not find one. If you are talking about
when you don't know the topic is addressing.
Exactly. You cannot. If you come to me, for instance, and give me some philosophical things, I will only just laugh and smile and direct you to where you get your information, for instance.
Okay.
Your review, for example, if you are a student, your professor should be a guide. And sometimes don't rely too much on your professor. Professors also love new ideas. If you have, that's why it's also good to read and to get some information even before approaching your supervisor. Sir, I have this article. It just came out. This is how this guy used it. The professor will be willing. Professors are changing. So there's no one particular way of doing a review.
Thank you, sir. Can you look at the screen?
Yeah.
Can you look at the screen and speak to this from David?
Yes.
Some journal sites are locked.
Any guidance? One, I remember as a PhD student, I was working on touting in Lagos State, area boys, whatever. And then I was having difficulties in accessing a lot of journals. But sometimes you see articles, just like they are locked. You cannot have access to an article. But what I did was to search for the lecturer's email. The researcher's email. And personally, I sent a message. Because remember, you don't need everything in a journal. You need some published articles in journals. Professors can be reached. Scholars can be reached. They have emails. And I'm telling you, if you send them a polite email with genuine reason why you need, they will. And sometimes
I think that
researchers are also very busy in this part of the world. If they did not reply you, don't be annoyed. Send them another mail.
Another one.
Send them another mail.
Thank you, Prof. I think it is laziness that will not make us to, and I'm happy with the way you have put it.
It's not necessary.
Most journals published today have addresses, email addresses, so we can reach most of these guys.
Lecturers are willing to share.
Yeah. There's another one quickly before we make this one the last one if there are no more other ones. I would like to know, how can I be sure to collect all the documents about my literature review topic? Do you make sense out of it, Prof?
Why you say all? The word all is a bit confusing here, for instance, because it cannot be all. It can be what is available at your disposal. And that's why you can, if you know what you have, you can speak to it. I remember as a young PhD student, a professor was trying to puncture a PhD defense. And the student said, as at the time he was writing his work, he did not lay his hand on that article. And that solves it all. And that's why every research must have a limitation.
Limitations.
So you are constrained. Number of pages, number of recent things to use. You cannot be exhaustive.
I am happy you have mentioned also limitations of language.
Yep.
Maybe others have read it, the other language, which you cannot. Thank you very much, Prof. Let me give you 30 seconds to react to this before we close the chapter on question and answer.
Journals, I will often not say journal. Recent references are very good, but not journals will. Yes, it's good to be current, no doubt about that. But the relevance is the issue about, because if you are in the story, it's a key thing. But in the sciences, emphasis is usually on how recent. But you must merge recency and reliability of your information together. Yeah. Or you can, except you are an archival or historical researcher.
Thank you, sir. Can I add this? Yeah. Some institution now will tell you, especially when it is not historical research, they'll tell you 70% currency and maybe less percentage for old ones, because we can't, because you'll be talking about theories and others, which are old things that you need to bring in. So the emphasis is that the current ones should be more.
Should be more. It also depends. Like in the sciences, you cannot run away from that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And some are emphasizing that when you say currency now, they're talking about 5 years, while others are saying it's 10 years. What do you want to say, sir?
Well, I don't think that it's always about the function of percentage, for instance. But one thing again, we must also understand that Africa is a bit rigid about knowledge.
Okay.
Africa, sometimes, well, let me not use the Africa, probably because of the British school, and I guess it's no longer the case. Knowledge is becoming more flexible. Make do with what you have. Mix, you must learn, it's like you are cooking, Some ingredients that are old has some peculiar taste when you mix it with something new. People also want to see how relevant it is. But if you are constrained on certain type of research, that all what is available are old sources, you are good to go.
Thank you, Prof. We would have loved to eat the meat. I mean, to keep the meat more, to give it more time in the mouth, but time will not allow it. We want to appreciate you very, very sincerely. The time is fast spent. This is just 4 minutes to 3, and we have quite some announcement to make, but not without first of all presenting you the certificate. We don't have money to give you, Prof. What you have even given us is invaluable, but let us give you this certificate. Please, can you be on your feet, Prof? Thank you very much, sir. Yes. This certificate of appreciation is presented to you, Professor Adediran Daniel Ikuomola, in recognition of your exceptional contribution as guest speaker at the May 2024 edition of Researchment Academy Webinar, which is on mastering the art of literature review, strategies and efficient searches, and effective writing, held on May 10, 2024. Congratulations, Prof.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Congratulations, sir.
I'm honored.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, our next item on this program is vote of thanks with some special announcements which are very crucial. Let me bring in the founder of Researchment Academy to quickly take both together, the announcement as well as the vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Mr. Missy,
Thank you very much, Dr. Isa. I've interacted with Professor Ikuomola, and honestly, from the beginning, I knew that this webinar is going to be awesome, and he has proven beyond our own plan, imagination, that wow, it's really invaluable resources to our generation. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to appreciate every one of us that have contributed to this webinar. At the same time, appreciate all of us that deem it fit to be here and learn. We have this vision to give back to the society, but we can't do that without you. Thank you so much. We are so grateful for your participation. And on this note, our mission might not be accomplished if this awesome webinar is not getting across. We don't give it the required publicity it required. So the resources is always archived in our YouTube channel. I want to implore you to please share it with your students, with your colleagues, and let them have access to it. That is when our objective is going to be accomplished on this note. On special announcements, Glintplus is an indigenous startup that is from Africa. Currently, the head office is not started in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, and then we are happy. We are glad that it's like that. We want to celebrate with Africans. We want to celebrate our origin this month because this is African month. And in Africa Week, we are having a special webinar where we have two reputable speakers that we've invited to give us, to share their experience with us on the African theme for 2024. So please be there on May 23 at 2 o'clock West Africa time for this special discussion. We have Glintplus is for years be trying to contribute to knowledge, and in doing this best, we started Researchment Academy. I want to let you know that Glintplus is also in an aspect called Glintplus Publishing, and in Glintplus Publishing we have 4 journals at the moment. 3 belong to Glintplus Publishing, while 1 is hosted for an institution. It's just to let you know that we have the facility to host institutional or association journal. So if you are interested, you can bring your resources to us. Your journal to us, we host online for your publication processes. Our journals include chemistry, which is for environment. We have a Journal of Mining and Geosciences that deals with engineering related to mining and natural resources, as well as earth sciences. We have Journal of Agriculture and Applied Biotechnology. It's well illustrated. It deals with all areas of agriculture. And we have an Ondo University. This is jointly published by Adediran University of University Akoko, as well as Ondo State University of Science and Technology, and the journal is Ondo University of Agriculture and Social Sciences. Please If you are looking for quality outlets to publish your work, consider checking our journals. You can find them on glintplus.com. Just go to journals and you will see our journals. And we welcome, if you can't find your journals, or you are interested in hosting your journals with us, please, probably we've not covered your area, and that will be our next point of discussion with Professor Ikuomola. It's going to guide us on how we can start a journal in his field. So we want to continue enjoying this we've enjoyed today. So if you want to host any journal that is not listed, please contact us. We will tell you and we will give you the details. Very much.